Radio, KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. And just as a reminder, you can follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. Just look for Viewpoint with Father John. And if you miss an episode, just go to YouTube and in the search bar, put Viewpoint with Father John, KCAA, and you can see all of our episodes for the past more than 3 years now. And also, if you want to follow me on Twitter, that's at Father John Reed. R-E-I-D is the proper Irish spelling of that name. And I'm always happy to have you follow and share some of your thoughts with us. So become part of the family that we have here. I enjoy hearing from all the different listeners, including listeners with different points of view. This isn't a one view area. There's enough room for all of us. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And folks, again, I want to tell you about my good friend, Dr. Nikki Ho at Claremont Pharmacy over in Claremont, of course. And by the way, they are doing vaccines there now. So if you're needing to get signed up for a vaccine, I hope that you will do that if you haven't been vaccinated already. But she's on the corner of Indian Hill Boulevard and Arrow Highway. I should say her pharmacy is on that corner. And, it's the best pharmacy in the area. They take care of all my needs, and I've never been in such good hands. And if you're looking for a haircut, don't go too much farther than that. Just over to the city of Pomona to Uppercuts Barbershop. You'll really like the service you have there. Good people there. My personal barber there is Sam, and Sam always does a great job for me. In fact, as you can see, I need to go and see Sam before the dog catcher gets me. And again, this next one is not a paid advertisement. This is just because I believe in the man, which is my friend Glenn Kirshner and his program Justice Matters. That's on YouTube. If you want straight information, particularly on all the legal stuff going on right now, check out my friend's channel over on YouTube, Justice Matters with Glenn Kirshner. He was a federal prosecutor for 30 years. He was also a prosecutor in the United States Army for 6.5 years. So he's really dependable. And with all the stuff in the news right now, it's kind of nice to get straight information. He is a contributor for NBC and MSNBC, so we're both on the NBC network just for clarity there. Disclosure, I guess is what they call it. I just disclosed myself to you. I hope you didn't mind. I hope nobody went blind for that. So those are some things just to keep in mind. And a special shout out tonight for a birthday that just took place. And I think that the right man to do all this is His Holiness Frank, the absolute Duke of all sound engineering. And tell us about the special birthday, my friend.
My girlfriend Katie had her birthday on Saturday. We went to Laguna Beach, and it was a lot of fun, and she is wonderful, and she's the best.
You know we got to do it all together now. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Katie. Happy birthday to you, and many more.
Many more.
And I love the smile you put on Frank's face, and so you're now part of our family here, and he has a special gift for you from the show. So, happy birthday, Katie. Kind of nice, and kind of wish I was Mormon so I could sing in a choir, but I know I get a letter for that one. So this week, there's a lot of stuff going on in the news, and it's heart-wrenching. You know, we had another video come out today about a 14-year-old who just got shot in Chicago. And look, we're at a time right now where everybody's hurting. Everybody's hurting. And so please keep these families in your prayers. I'm not here to say who's right or who's wrong. I'm just saying there's some families who are hurting, who've lost some loved ones. And I hope you'll join me in supporting them with prayer and with some love. Speaking of that, tonight I want to talk to you a little bit about, once I can start to talk again, about one of my favorite verses in the gospel. It's John 21, verses 14 through 17. And I want to take it apart a little bit. Now I'm going to speak of some other stuff tonight as well. But this is where I want to start off. And to read it to you, for those of you who don't have the whole Bible memorized. By the way, I don't have the whole Bible memorized. I've discovered it's written down, so I can just read it. And for those of you that get mad when I say that, lighten up. It's just a joke. But this is what the gospel's saying. Jesus says to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said, "Tend my sheep." He said to him a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he said to him a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." Now, what's going on here? There's a lot to unpack. First of all, Jesus repeating it 3 times means it's really important. Now, that's kind of a Hebrew and Aramaic tradition that when something's important, you repeat it like that. But where this is taking place, this is after Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. I think this is perfect, being that we just had Easter. And so if you remember, Jesus had told Peter before the cock crows 3 times, "You will deny me 3 times." And which he did. He denied him 3 times. "I don't know that man. I don't know what you're talking about." And that came with a lot of guilt and shame. So after the resurrection, here's Jesus with everybody and with Thomas, who's known as Doubting Thomas, and the rest of them. And Jesus is showing not just his mercy, but how we get to participate in redemption. You know, he didn't say to Simon Peter, "I want you to write 100 times on a chalkboard when they invent them that, you love me." He said, "If you love me, you'll feed my sheep." Now, when he says sheep and lamb and sheep, the reason that he used different terms, and in some translations they say they use the word "ewe" as well, meaning a baby lamb, is the idea is don't leave anybody out. Love them all. Feed them all. Because love is an action. My friend Chuck Chamberlain used to say that. He said if you were to define the word love into one word, that would be action. You do things for those you love because you want to, for free and for fun. You don't barter, you just do it. And Jesus is kind of saying the same thing here. If you really love me, it's an action word. Love is a verb, not a noun. And it means going beyond the prejudice that you were raised with, and that's not saying anything bad about Hebrew. We all have tribal stuff. I mean, look in America. We have tribal issues. We really do. Look at what's on in the news right now. If you don't think there's some tribal issues, and when I say tribal, I don't just mean Native American. I mean different groups, you know. January 6th was a tribal problem, okay? So Jesus is saying, don't leave anyone out. You got to go beyond the tribe. Your vision has to be bigger. But there's another reason why Jesus presents this 3 times. It's because Peter had denied him 3 times, so he's given him 3-time redemption. It's not to shake his finger at Peter. It's showing his mercy and his graciousness to let Peter know he still loves him. And I think that's a message we really need right now, because there's a lot of people feeling really bad about a lot of things, and they think they're beyond Jesus' love, the Christ love. And I have to be honest, the church hasn't been very helpful in this area. It totally has gone against this very gospel right here, this very edict that Jesus gave us, because they're saying only people their church will get fed, and that's not what Jesus said. He said, feed them all. You know, I'll give you an example. When I was a young man, gosh, I remember when that sounded silly when I said I was a young man, but now I'm getting to be an old man. It doesn't seem silly anymore. It seems, yeah, when I was a young man. And in my town, Ontario, California, we had an Episcopalian church, and Father John Olson was the rector there. Wonderful man, and very Christ-like, but with a sailor mouth. And but he was so cool. And he was always having problems with the city for this very reason that I thought made him so cool, and why I was so attracted to his church as a young man. And that is, on the sanctuary to his church, he broke all the locks to the sanctuary so that building cannot be locked. And the fire department said, you know, what happens if someone comes in at night, knocks over a candle, and the place burns down? He says, well, we built it once, we'll build it again. And the police are saying to him, well, what happens if people come in and steal stuff? He says, how can you steal what's God? This belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to me. And he said, what happens if the homeless come and sleep on the pews? And Father John said, well, what better place for them to be, though? They're safe. And then he said, let me ask you a question. What if in the middle of the night, someone needs a place to pray, a place of comfort, and they come and the door is locked? What is the greater danger? And I've never forgotten that. I mean, I was very young when he told me about this. And there are many times when I was going to school, going to seminary, that in the middle of the night, I would go over there to that church because I knew the sanctuary was unlocked. And I would go to the front pew by the altar rail, and I'd get on my knees and I'd pray for hours, asking for guidance and direction. Is this what you would have me be, Lord? Is this what you would have me do? And if Father John had followed everyone else's advice and locked the place up at night, I wouldn't have that sanctuary to go to. I wouldn't have that safe place to pray and meditate. And I know God is everywhere that we are, but there's some places we go and we feel it a little closer than other places. That's why it's called sanctuary. Sanctuary means set apart. Set apart. And I think that I'm a better priest today because of Father John Olson, because of what he did, by the risk he took. And, you know, it would be nice if he didn't, everyone thought I was a hero, but he had to fight everybody on this. I think even the parish council, you know, we think that you can steal what's God's. And it was because of him that I had the attitude that all people should be welcomed in the church. Didn't matter where they came from. Didn't matter where they came from. You know, I was at a parish in Covina one time, and there was a door that faced the street. Branca was the street, and one day I'm in the middle of my homily, and someone starts knocking on that door real hard. And I was a little bit irritated, to be honest with you. You know, he's interrupting my homily. I waited all week for this, you know. and he's knocking and knocking, so I opened the door, and he just wanted to know if there was a church there. And I thought, all right. I said, there is. You're welcome to come in. He says, no, I just wanted to know. And he left, and I realized after the service was over, that just might have been Jesus. Are you really a church there? Are you going to open the door to even someone who's irritating you? Or are you only going to open it to the nice people? And it was a powerful lesson for me. And I'll be honest, I was glad I opened the door just in case. And speaking of opening doors, it's time to open the door to a commercial. We're at that time. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John on NBC Radio, KCAA, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
The Tri-City Shopping Center in Redlands is serving up some really cool ice cream at La Micho Acana. Then get your chocolates and other delights from C's Candies. Moms and future moms who visit the mall can cool off and relax while they get treated like royalty at Shiny Nails or Francis Nails and then pampered at Texture Hair. The Tri-City Center is filled with retailers who care about you. Shop at the Tri-City Center in Redlands and see why they call it the Mall with a Heart.
102.3 FM, K292 FQ, Riverside.
And welcome back. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM. And you can listen from anywhere in the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. I'm laughing because I almost was on the wrong page on my computer because I'm pretty computer illiterate. And heaven knows what I would have read to you instead of what our opening is supposed to be. So, Lord, hear our prayer. So we're talking about Jesus' love tonight and the command to feed his sheep. And as I was growing up, going through spiritual development, finding discernment, what we call that, find out if I should be a priest. The ones that made it possible for me to really talk with God and feel like something was listening were the people who are open to me. Not just because of their title, but because of their presence. You know, I was told in seminary many times that the collar doesn't make the priest. There are a lot of people who wear a clergy collar that in dealing with them, you never know that you've been with God because they were mean. You know, I think of a case one time, and I will admit this one's hard for me to share. And it was a priest I knew, kind of a crotchety old guy. And I'm not trying to be unkind. He just really was. And for him, the priesthood seemed to be about power. And almost every morning he had coffee in this particular, we used to call them greasy spoons, people who drove truck, but a little coffee shop. And after going there for many, many months, maybe a couple years, a waitress came up and asked to sit with him. She had something she needed to get off her chest. And so he says, sure, go ahead. And she's coming to him for comfort. When she was young, she'd had an abortion. And instead of talking to her about God's grace, he said, well, you know that you committed murder, right? And I was aghast. I was there when this happened. I thought, what in the world are you doing? She already feels shame. She already feels guilty. She's coming seeking forgiveness. She's coming seeking love. And I don't know what it's like to walk in her shoes. As a man, I can't become pregnant. And I don't know what it's like to make that kind of decision. And whatever your politics on that are, that's your business. But when I'm supposed to be there to feed the sheep, and she was one of the sheep, my job, as far as I understand, is to try to help bring healing and to try to bring love. Not to act the big shot because I have a priest collar. A friend of mine used to say that religion could either be the greatest catalyst for faith or the greatest obstacle. And what I witnessed there was religiosity get in the way of conversion. Conversion isn't trying to convert somebody at a funeral to come to your church. Conversion is when someone is able to experience the love of God for them as well. It's not joining a club. It's realizing that you are loved. That's what it is to feed the sheep, is to bring them love. What else do we have to feed them? You know, I used to go to retreat at Manresa, and I'm sorry that the Jesuits ever sold the place. It's a Buddhist place now, and the Buddhists are doing a good job with it. But the way they used to do the retreats there, I remember Father Shepherd had a policy there, and Jesuits had for a long time, that let's say we're on a 3-day retreat. Those are usually what I went to, is 3-day men's retreat for spiritual development. And he would make the announcement, this is what it costs us to have you here. And they would give everyone an empty envelope, a blank envelope, and they say, give what you can. If you don't have anything, don't worry about it. If you have extra, give extra. It all works out the same. And the idea of it was they wanted it to be open to everybody to be able to experience this time of spiritual growth, this set of side time, the sanctuary set apart, and to have spiritual discovery. And they didn't want the money to get in the way of that. Now, I will admit that churches have stopped doing that, and I'm sorry that they have, really. Part of it is because things have gotten very expensive. I will admit that. But part of it is, we always got to try to make sure that those who don't have money don't get turned away either. Because who did Jesus come for? All of us, not just some of us. And when I say all of us, I'm not talking about joining a church. I'm talking about all of us experiencing God's love, that none of us are to be left out. It's really important. That's what feed my sheep means. Don't leave anybody out. Let everyone know that no matter what they've done, I've not given up on them. I've not stopped loving them. I may not agree with what they're doing, but it has nothing to do with my loving of them. When I used to go up there, one of the things I used to love is At one time, I lived 73 miles away from where I worked, and that's a long time in the car. And I lived in Fontana. I was working in Van Nuys, and right in the middle of that was where Manresa Retreat House was in Azusa. And there'd be some nights I'd just be torn in knots trying to, what am I really supposed to do? And I would drive up to Manresa because I had that experience there of them welcoming everybody. And I would sit on the patio in the middle of the night because I was printing newspapers, and so our work was at night, printing for the next morning. And as I sat on the patio, I could hear the priests upstairs snoring, and it was comforting. And it gave me peace. It gave me peace. And that was the greatest gift that they can give me, was peace, to help me see that even with everything going on, with all the doubts in my mind and in my heart and in my spirit, that there was a place I can be still for a few moments and I could feel the presence of God. Now, God's with me everywhere I go, but when I was there, I consciously knew God was with me. And I would have never been able to discover that had I not been treated with the kindness and the love of the Jesuits. Now, I'm Eastern Orthodox, not Roman Catholic. And all of our churches have a little bit of ego going. That's why we excommunicated each other in 1054. But we do exchange the sacraments. I'll do a night on that one of these nights. But because of how welcomed I was there, it helped me do what I do today. But more than that, it taught me the importance of being open to other people with other views. Look, not everybody likes strawberry milkshakes. Why they don't, I don't know. I just don't understand it. I think if God made anything better, he kept it up in heaven for himself. But some people don't like strawberry milkshakes. Does that make them evil? No. Does it make me evil because I like them? No. We just have two different tastes. But we can both be very good people. And we can both experience God. And we can both experience the delight of flavor, just different ways that we enjoy that. Just different flavors. And if you look at spirituality, that's kind of how it is. I think it's a wonderful blessing that God finds all these ways to express God's love to all of us, whether you're Christian, Buddhist, Islam, Judaism, it doesn't matter. Sikh, all of it. We're the ones who have to say, well, I'm right. It has to be this way. God is incapable of loving any other way. That's a really small image of God. I don't know how you're going to feed God's sheep with that. Maybe you can. I don't know. It seems like it causes more trouble than anything in my mind. But how do I feed God's sheep? Do I have to be rich? No. Which is good because I've lived on love offerings my entire vocation. I've always driven old cars, and I've gotten along well with old cars. If anyone saw the car that I drive now, you'd be laughing because it's hanging on by a thread. But it gets me from point A to point B. But what I can do is I can give love to people. I can be there when they need me. I can put my arm around them and bring comfort. That's how we feed the sheep. That's how we feed the sheep. I was doing a funeral recently. I do a lot of funerals, as some of you know. And there's a guy I've known for 40 years, easily 40 years. And he's a funeral director, and he can't get through a funeral without standing before the group and saying, I'm a Christian man. And then giving a small sermon, how they need to think like he does to be a good Christian. Now, he's not the clergy of the service. He's supposed to be the funeral director, but he does this. And the point is, a lot of people have gotten hurt from that. and felt like they didn't know if their loved one was loved by God because of that. That's not Christianity. That's not spirituality. That's ego. Ego is an acronym for a lot of people. It stands for edging God out. Playing that song, "How Great I Art," instead of "How Great Thou Art." I've shared this many times, and some of you are probably tired of hearing it, but I'm the one with the microphone, so too bad. About an experience I had, and I talk about this in my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me, where I was concelebrating Mass with my bishop. Concelebrating means I'm helping to serve, did what's called the liturgy, for those who are not familiar with liturgical churches. And we'd gotten through the gospel readings and the stuff we do, the opening prayers and such. And as the bishop was preaching, we're in his private chapel. There's only room for like 10 people there. So it's a small group, very intimate. And the bishop had this painting that he knew the artist. In fact, the artist was in prison when he painted this. And the artist had painted a portrait of Jesus holding a little baby in the palm of his hand, just a little embryo. And this artist very kindly and lovingly really portrayed the love of Jesus looking at this little life in his hand. And I got caught up in this. And suddenly I became one in that. And you have to experience to understand what that means. I mean, there's no way to put that into words. And in the middle of that, I became acutely aware that God did not bring me into the priesthood out of virtue. Instead, God said, in spite of your iniquities, I can use you to love. And it hit me so deep of how graceful God is, that God brought me in not out of deserving, but because God could use me to love, that all I could do is sit there and weep. I couldn't even finish the Mass. I couldn't even go up to help with communion. The bishop brought communion back to me, and all I could do is look at him with tears just streaming down my face. I couldn't even speak. They're not tears of sorrow. They're tears of wonderment, tears of the embrace of God. And after the Mass, he left me by myself there in the chapel. And about an hour later, he came down to check on me, and I very feebly tried to explain to him what had taken place. And he looked at me, and his eyes filled with tears. He said, "Oh, you had the Christ experience. You've now gone from being ordained to being a priest." And he grabbed me, embraced me, and we both bawled like a couple of babies because he knew exactly what I'd gone through, because he had gone through it. I wasn't called into the priesthood out of virtue. I didn't get called in because I deserved it. I was called in because God looked through me to be able to see his children and love them, and allowed me to have the privilege to be a vessel of that love. And when we come back from commercial break, I'm going a couple minutes early, but when we come back, I want to talk about how God uses the most unlikely people to do his work. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John on NBC Radio, KCAA, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Tri-City Shopping Center in Redlands is serving up some really cool ice cream at Lamicho Acana. Then get your chocolates and other delights from See's Candies. Moms and future moms who visit the mall can cool off and relax while they get treated like royalty at Shiny Nails or Francis Nails and then pampered at Texture Hair. The Tri-City Center is filled with retailers who care about you. Shop at the Tri-City Center in Redlands and see why they call it the Mall with a Heart.
And welcome back, friends. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the world at kcaaradio.com. And by the way, this is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. I almost forgot the other part of that identification with the station there. If ever you want to send me an email, one of the places you can do that is at viewpointwithfatherjohn.com. And I haven't announced that in a while, but that's another way you can send me communication. And I do read the things that you folks send me, and I thank you. And it always blows me away when I get an email or a message from somebody clear on the other side of the globe. And I'm deeply honored that you take the time to listen to this, because it's a privilege getting to speak with you each week. It's not a right, it's a privilege, and I thank you for that. Before the commercial break, I'd mentioned that I want to talk a little bit about how God uses the most unlikely people to do God's work. And one of the most glaring is Moses. Now, you might say, why are you picking on Moses? I'm not picking on him. I'm telling the truth. Moses was a fugitive. He's a murderer, and he's running from the law. Now, why in the world would God want Moses to lead his people? Because Moses was open. Moses knew he didn't have it coming. And so God does God's best work through the people who don't think that they deserve to be used. You know, I want you to think about that. I always worry about people who think that you should have to listen to them because they're clergy. Not always, you know. And I'm just as guilty of that. I mean, good heavens, if you would have met me when I was first ordained, you wouldn't recognize who I am today, because I was trying so hard to do it right that I was doing it completely wrong, because I just, nobody could relate to God the way I was relating God to people, because I was so afraid of doing it wrong. And so what I gave them was ego. I was busy trying to impress them with what I learned every year of seminary, you know, and all the way to my PhD. You know, I wanted them to know I know something. They didn't want to know how much I knew. They wanted to know if I cared. They wanted to know if I loved them. And so Moses was able to lead God's people because he knew that he wasn't a big shot, you know. And the different people that God has used, it's usually the people who don't think they're a big deal. And even the ones that do think they're a big deal, they usually wind up getting humbled, you know. And sometimes we get these transformations and we don't even realize it's happened. I'll give you an example of that. I was, 25 years ago, somewhere in there, I was leading a men's retreat, 3-day retreat in Big Bear. And, you know, some people said they enjoyed the retreat and it was okay. Well, a few years ago, I did a retreat at Sarah Retreat in Malibu, and a lot of people who were at the Big Bear retreat was at this retreat, and they hadn't seen me in many years do a retreat. And one of them, who's been a friend for many years, came up and said, "Wow, have you changed?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "That was a fabulous retreat." I said, "I don't understand. I didn't do anything different." He says, "Oh, yes. Hearing you now compared to all those years ago, you have changed and you have grown. And now it's a really good retreat. Back then, we really showed you a lot of tolerance. So, but see, I couldn't see it because I'm on the inside of this. I didn't see all the changes that were taking place. But when I stopped trying to run the show, God was able to work through me and make those changes so that the retreats were better, not because of me, but because I was learning how to get out of the way. Just like this radio show. I have to get out of the way. I don't know what you need to hear. I don't. God does, but I don't. And anytime I think I know what you need to hear, I'm in the way. And that's a fact. And so that's why when I say I'm humbled to come into your homes through the radio, I mean that. I am humbled because you're allowing me to be a vessel of love. And you can't be a vessel of love without experiencing some of that love. And once again, God using one of the most unlikely people. I have no right to this. I was a street rat. I've been on my own since I was 14, you know. So again, God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. And but the idea is when we learn to get out of the way, we can become that unlikely person that God works through. We can be that vessel of love. And some of the people who have helped me the most have been people you wouldn't suspect of being that. And yet, they were such a clear vessel of God's love. You know, I have a friend, Father Michael Berry. He's the one who runs Mary Mercy Center in San Bernardino, and one of the neatest guys you ever meet. And he has a special gift that blows me away. He holds these healing masses. Now, there's some people hear about that and they think it's hokey. And for some people, it might be. But Father Michael Berry is such an open soul and such a loving individual that's incredible how God speaks right through him. I remember I had gone to one of his healing masses. I'd been invited by somebody. And instead of you telling him what you needed healing for, he told you. And when he walked up to me, he said things he had no way of having that information. And he was 100% right. And it was stuff I needed healing with. It wasn't physical. It was emotional. It was a family issue. And he didn't know my family. And the point of that is, he was not in the way. He was the vessel. And by opening himself up and not having to know everything, not having to be a big shot, God was able to work through him and to help so many people. And by the way, I did get the healing that I needed. And it wasn't the one I thought I'd gone there for. This is much better. Much better. Now, why am I talking about this? Because you too are the hands of God. You too are the vessels that God wants to use to love others. Doesn't mean you have to go out and buy a tent and do a revival every Sunday. You know, that's you might be better off if you're not doing that. But if you remain open, God will use you for good. And God will use you to do things that are beyond your wildest dreams. Not talking about getting glory. I'm talking about being a healing factor in people's lives. That you can feel God reaching through you to them. That you look into their eyes and you see God looking back, right back at you. There's no way to describe that experience. And so you don't have to be a priest. You don't have to be a nun. You don't have to be a bishop. You don't have to be a Eucharistic minister or a deacon. You don't need a fancy title. All you need is to be open and to realize that God is doing for you what you cannot do for yourself. That's when it becomes exciting. That's when life becomes the adventure, because you're no longer running the show. You know, I start off each morning because, I start off with an hour prayer meditation. The first thing I say is, good morning, I'm reporting for duty. What would you have me be? And then I say, God, please remove my fear and direct my attention to what you'd have me be. Because, there's a lot to be afraid of these days, And so before I even get started, I ask God to remove my fear and direct my attention to what God would have me be. Not just what God would have me do, what God would have me be. See, we're not human doers, we're human beings. And when we become human beings, we discovered that the being that we are is divine. It's divinity. It's the doing that gets in the way of the being, because we think that we are identified by what we do, not by what we are. And so we keep trying to do all these things to disguise the being, and really it's the being that we're supposed to be. And it's all about surrender. You see, when I talked about Moses, what did Moses do? Moses surrendered. Mother Mary, what did she do? She surrendered. Be it done unto me according to your word. Wow, what a powerful prayer. You want a prayer to start off your day with? Try that one. Be it done unto me according to your word, whatever that may be. The idea is to learn how to be still and know that God is God. Now, those aren't my words. I take it from Psalm 46, verse 10. Okay, give credit where credit's due. But, if you're looking for a great meditation, there's one to start with. And one of the things I was taught in centering prayer, which Thomas Keaton was very famous for, and many other great priests of the Roman Church, as well as the Eastern Orthodox, was he would take that and say, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. And then you let go into the meditation. And the idea of that last part, to be, is to be in conscious unity with God so God could use you to do good things. Things that you may not be expecting to do. If you're going to, ask to do God's will, then you better put on your seatbelt, because there's a good chance that it's going to be different than what you had in mind. And that's sometimes how I can tell when it's God's will instead of my will. If it seems like a great idea to me, it's probably my will. If it seems like it's something much bigger than that, it's probably God's will. So, while we're coming into our last 5 minutes or so, 6 minutes, somewhere in there, I want to go back to where we started out. Simon Peter, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord. You know I love you. Feed my sheep. Simon Peter, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Feed my lamb. And Jesus said a third time, Simon Peter, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was disturbed that Jesus asked a third time. He felt bad about it. He says, you know all things, Lord. You know I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. Brothers and sisters, I hope as we go our different ways this week, we'll all try to find ways to feed the sheep. And not just feed the sheep empty things, but feed the sheep nourishment. What do I mean by that? Loving nourishment. Something that helps them go a little further. Something that makes their day a little better. I'm not talking advice. People have more than enough advice. I'm talking about presence. Being present with people. Live our lives in a way, as St. Francis used to say, live in such a way that people who have been with you know that they have been with God, have experience with God. Now, I'm paraphrasing that a little bit. I don't have the quote right in front of me. And so, St. Francis, I'm sorry if I got it wrong. Don't send a dog to give me a notice on my lawn for that. But it's I love St. Francis because he had a great sense of humor. Just a quick little side story. Every time people would talk about how holy St. Francis was, he'd do something to just prove to him that he wasn't. And he had a friar that would do anything that Francis would ask him, Rufus. And people were talking about how holy Francis was again. And so he got Rufus. He says, I need you to do something with me. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing some of this. He says, what is it? He says, I need you to get naked like I'm going to get naked and walk all through town naked so people realize that we're not holy. And they did. Because he didn't want the idea of him being holy getting in the way of God's good. Because he realized that it was God that was good. He was just a servant. And what a great place to bring the last few minutes of the show is to talk about one of the greatest examples of this being St. Francis, who saw God, saw divinity in everything. Mother Earth, Father Sky, Brother Sun, Sister Deer. You know, he used to go down by the stream and preach to the fish. And he loved on them. And some people say, oh, that's just crazy. No. He saw what we're all trying to see. He saw God right there. He saw God as relationship. God is not arrangement. God is relationship. And the way we feed God's sheep is to be part of that relationship, that people being with you know that they've been visited by God. Not for the ego, but for the sake that they were loved just where they are, as they are, without having to do anything to earn it. How do you earn love? You can't. You can't earn what's given to you freely. I'm not saying we don't try. Heaven knows I spent a good part of my life trying. Only to discover that what I've been looking for, I've been looking with. It's been there the whole time. And if I let go, and I let God do what God does, I no longer have to question or work on self-esteem. I find that God has had that in me the entire time. The entire time. And as we come onto this, I want to share one last story with you. And it's about a friend of mine. I've shared this story before, but it has so much meaning to me. A group of people I run around with, and I think I was about 17, 18 years old when this happened. A friend of ours had died, and we'd gone to the funeral home for the visitation and the funeral. And my friend Chip, after he signed the guest book, he put after his name DDS. I said, Chip, you're not a dentist. What's the DDS for? He says, it's what these spiritual principles have given me. Dignity, decency, and self-respect. I said, you keep signing DDS. Brothers and sisters, when we get out of the way and let God do what God does, we get to put DDS behind our name. Not for the sake of ego, but because for the first time we know we can't earn it. It's been given to us. God's love has already been given to us. All we can do is discover it. And we can't discover it by judging other people or feeling better than other people. We can only discover it by realizing that it's been given to us as a gift that can't be earned. And so I hope tonight I got to feed a little bit of the sheep. I hope tonight you get to experience some of the love of God. And I look forward to being with you again next week, and I thank you. And if no one's told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. Thanks for listening to Viewpoint with Father John.
KCAA Loma Linda. Listen on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM.
Medical scientists worldwide are encouraging people to eat more fish. Most American diets are low in cold water fish that are abundant in important omega-3 oils.